A very good afternoon to you on our program, African Discourse on Independent Television. You're welcome to the program. My name is Evan Sudokogie. Today is the 7th day of April 2025. And of course, right from 1995, about 31 years downtime, the United Nations has set today as a day to remember the victims of the genocide that took place in 1994 in Rwanda. So you see that when we talk about Rwanda, we will never forget the Tutsi and of course the Hutsi, those two, ethnic groups that decided to come against, each other just because of interest. But 31 years after now, what is the story? What has changed in Rwanda? And of course, why and how has it changed? And what are the lessons that we can learn or we should learn from the Rwandan situation? All these are the things we're going to be talking about today as we make reflections into the Rwandan story. Well, to look at all this today, we are so privileged to have two guests. First and foremost, we have a gentleman here. We're talking about Professor Buyinami Ayinde, Deputy Vice Chancellor, University of Benin, and of course a lecturer with the University of Benin. Professor, good afternoon and you're welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Okay. And also, too, when we have able to join Mrs. Florence Masajunwa, Professor Florence Masajunwa from Edo University, Yamo, she will join us so that, because she's going to be giving us a first-hand information. Many times she has traveled to Rwanda. If not for the fact that she loved Nigeria so much, she would have preferred to be a Rwandese. But for the fact that she loves the country, Nigeria, so much, so she decides to stay here. So she's going to be giving us a first-hand information about the situation in Rwanda after 31 years of genocide in Rwanda. Professor, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right, so just as we're trying to say that 7th April marks the start of the 1994 genocide, and also to understand that the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution ARES 58/234 designating 7th April as the International Day of Reflection on the Genocide in Rwanda, and of course encourages all member states, organizations of the United Nations system, and other relevant international organizations as well as civil society organizations to observe the International Day, including special observances and activities in memory of victims of genocide in Rwanda. Now, Prof, we may forget the genocide 31 years after, but what we are looking at is that the victims of this genocide will never be forgotten in a hurry. We're told that as part of the situation of the victims that some went through, those are victims now that some members of the Rwandese family or the Rwandese cannot get back to their family again after that genocide. After it was actually a war in 1994, just as we had, some time ago in Nigeria, whereby we had some states warring, each other, and of course that led to internally displaced persons in Nigeria. So the implication of it is that we have some persons that are in our IDP camps in various parts of the country that may not be able to get back to their families again. It's a very, very sorry situation, and of course it's a sad one. So that is the situation in Rwanda. So those victims of that genocide, those victims of that war in 1994, we're going to be looking at the situation, of course, make a reflection into the lessons that we learned from Rwanda. So 31 years after, Prof, what do you think has changed in Rwanda?
Well, of course, Rwanda as an independent country, we all know it comprises of 3 tribes, the major of which are the Hutus. You have the Tutsi, you have the Twa. The Hutus, from what they comprise of about 85% of the population, whereas the Tutsi you have 14%, then the remaining 1% belongs to the Twa. And the issues that came up that actually led to the crisis are more or less political. Infighting, suspicion, hatred for one another, to the extent that the campaign of calumny, these ones are like cockroaches, these ones are like rats, and eventually the crisis started. And you have people who are principally involved, who eventually engineered and then mobilized people to make sure that they had the unfortunate incident over a period of 100 days. Even if one has experience of horror within one day, it's not something that you want to remember for anything. Mm-hmm. Talk less of 100 days of horror, 100 days of destruction, women and properties. You know, if you want to kill an animal, it's expected that you kill an animal with a little, with some mercy. That if the animal had the opportunity to complain, you will have had. But here we kill human beings. People kill human beings using what the term defoliation, you know, removing all the limbs with cutlasses. Painful death, for that matter. But we thank God it didn't last more than that, and all the actors were one way or another brought to book. Just about a few years back, we heard of one of them who ran to Germany or one of the European countries, who was eventually arrested at the age of 84. Who one of the pioneers of the horror
war, of the crisis.
Yeah. Who at the point of being captured, he escaped and got to Europe, changed his name. He was eventually captured and he was eventually arrested and tried, as the case may be. You know, we thank God again that all through after the period, we've had series of development to the extent that we feel, as of today, one of the good places you can visit in Africa is Rwanda. Yeah. So in terms of education, in terms of infrastructural development, in terms of beauty of the nation, you see that all in Rwanda. Of course, if we say we want to compare them with us in Nigeria, they are far, far away from us in terms of population. Because as at that time when the war started, they were just about 7 million in number. And taking that into consideration, the population now is not up to what you can say is up to 30 million. So, and there are states nowadays in Nigeria, if you combine the population of Lagos and Ogun State, that may be more than that.
30 million.
So we cannot say they are close to us in terms of population. Yeah. But in terms of national achievement, we can say Rwanda is more stable. Much more stable than what we have in Nigeria.
Okay. Now, earlier on you said that the genocide lasted for about 100 days. And we're told that 365 days makes a year. So a quarter of the whole year of the whole year was used for killing, people, maiming people, and of course, putting them in a condition that we don't want to remember. I thought we could have visuals for this discussion today, but maybe some other time we should be able to do that. But let's look at the whole situation. Now, what actually happened to Rwanda seems to have spread into the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I'm one of those that probably is not too happy with Rwanda. I mean, when you hear stories of how the M23 is being fingered for what is happening in the DRC, and of course we know that M23 is a strong military force in Rwanda. Now, can we then say that Rwanda probably succeeded in pushing the crisis out of their nation and taking it to a neighboring countries? Can we say it so?
Well, that may be difficult to assert, although it's not too far from that, because Kagame, being the president of Rwanda, was actively involved in the crisis and happened to be one of the leaders of a group that eventually succeeded in subduing the situation, which we still have up to today, himself being the president, more or less becoming the life president of Rwanda.
Yeah, Rwanda.
Yeah, now, if...
and we heard that he's even trying to breed his son.
His son. Well, that would be unfortunate. It would be like turning the whole thing to a dynasty. And if you have that, automatically it will not be healthy for the nation. Because what you eventually start saying is that in the whole of the nation, it's only your family that has the solution to various problems of the nation. So we are all endowed different ways.
But again, we may also have to give it to Paul Kagame. I mean, the way he has repositioned the country. I mean, don't you think so?
Well, we are not saying he has not tried his best. But there is always the peak of everything. Even when you are intelligent, you get to the peak, you quickly realize that you call some other persons on board. So life doesn't run like that. There were people who, one way or another, he didn't make himself a leader. He's a leader based on the support of so many people. And you may find among the population people that also have good programs that can advance the progress of Rwandese. So if that is the case, I don't think it would be right to make sure that his son becomes his successor. That will not be, if it is a dynasty, well, it can be like that. But we are talking of a whole nation, a democratically recognized nation, not a military that you can say, well, you can do it by force. It shouldn't be.
Okay. Now, Professor Buyinami, now, some say that what happened in Rwanda was a civil war, while some say that it's a genocide. I mean, genocide in the sense that a particular group had to kill the other group, maim them, and give them some bodily destructions and harm and all that. But let's look at it now. We all know what were the situations in Rwanda. You know, they fight for natural resources. Who owns the land, so to say? And of course, whose interest should the land be for? Those were the situations in Rwanda that led to the civil war. Now, do we think that that civil war was needed after all? I mean, if we are saying that, okay, after that civil war, Rwanda now knew and now saw respite. Was that civil war needed after all?
Well, in any situation that eventually dovetailed to major crisis that involved the loss of life, lives and properties, such situation must be avoided at all times. Because I believe that if at all times when people go into war, we come back to the round table to discuss, particularly with the living, with those that survive. Where did we put the round table in the first place before we started? So that calls for the use of high level of wisdom. Because knowing fully well that any crisis, there is no crisis that will eventually produce any tangible result. Because you can replace properties. We cannot replace human lives. So it's not even all the properties that we can replace. There are some that we will lose and lose forever. So what do we now, where do we now place the effort? I mean, the use of intelligence, the use of wisdom. Because it's only in the animal kingdom that you see these animals fighting, particularly these big deers. When they fight, you know, they can lock their horns in such a way that the more powerful may eventually knock the neck, twist the neck of the weak. But at the end of the day, when the weak is dead, to remove his own horns from the entanglement becomes difficult. So when predators come, much as they eat the dead,
They also eat the living.
They will also live the living. They will also eat the living. And that is why at all times, particularly in Africa, we have to look inwards and then put on our thinking caps. Because come to think of it, the kind of weapons that are involved in wars are not the type that we in Africa are capable of producing, of manufacturing. The ones that manufacture these weapons will one way or the other become our friends. They will support A, they will support B. When B observe that the weapon they are using, A is using, is more superior, it will find a way to go and see the supplier again, who may also jack up the cost. So it's the same persons, the same groups of persons that supply the materials to them. So you are contributing to the wealth of such manufacturers while destroying yourselves.
All right, so let's look at, after the civil war in Rwanda, we understand that respite came to the nation, and of course that was the beginning of the country now knowing peace, and that is where we're talking about today, that Rwanda happens to be one of the best nations on the continent of Africa. Now, Rwanda may have gone through a civil war, and they have the Rwanda that they have today. Nigeria has also gone through a civil war. And of course, we have the kind of Nigeria that we have today. So what do we think, Prof? What do you think that Rwanda has done? I mean, what lessons did they learn from their situation that Nigeria may not have learned even after our own civil war?
Well, I would say there are many. One of them is the fact that they have this national consciousness, which starts from the leadership, that any time you want to address or introduce yourself as a Rwandese, not as a Hutus or not as a Tutsi. And that is why they said in Rwanda today, you cannot, as a foreigner, you don't get there and start asking where are the Hutus, they will deal with you. They have been able to try as much as possible, at least at the superficial level, if I may put it that way.
But the major three tribes are still known in Rwanda.
The three tribes are still there, but they are no longer carrying it on their heads the way it was before the war.
So in other words, that ethnicity issue is really not...
It has been downplayed.
Okay.
It has been downplayed. What is now the focus is the progress of Rwanda, not the progress of Hutus or the progress of Tutsi or the progress of Tua. It's the progress of the entire Rwanda. And that is what we lack in this country.
Okay, so we still have ethnicity issue in Nigeria.
Well, we have ethnicity issue in Nigeria. Don't let us run away from that. Because if anyone, as we speak today, has a major problem that we know this person is wrong completely, any attempt to say you want to deal with the person at the national level, his tribes may come up and say they want to start marginalize, they want to victimize us, because that is the only person we have there. But in reality, if we don't take the bull by the horn, we don't ensure justice for everyone, there is no way we'll be able to have this collective progress that is being witnessed in Rwanda.
Okay. Now, that is probably one. I mean, what you just explained is probably one of the factors that we have worked for Rwanda, and we also need to replicate it here in Nigeria. Now, apart from that now, Prof, which other thing do we think may have worked for Rwanda after the civil war that we also need to learn?
Well, as part of the things that one can say worked for them, they quickly realized the enormity of the destruction that they passed through, and also the enormity of the number of people that were displaced. Because come to think of it, when you have that kind of situation at hand, there will be people, just as you said earlier on, there will be people on account of being displaced that may never sight any of their relations again. They will be in the same, they could be still alive, but to know where this person is,
they can't trace them.
They can't trace anyone. Just like you have, the example is what we have in Borno State, where Boko Haram is ravaging everywhere. There were people that were taken out of that environment to other parts of the country, who, as we speak, do not know where the brothers, where the sisters, where the parents are up to today. And it is like that. So knowing that fully, that you have these persons that may have also witnessed the killing of certain individuals, how people were destroyed, you know, not just mutilated, the memory will still be there. If they were children, maybe 10 years, 15 years in 1994, add that 1 to 31 years. So they have this standing memory, reverberating at all times. So they try as much as possible to take this psyche away from their consciousness, to make sure that they find a way to homogenize many people as much as they can.
All right. So, like in our own case in Nigeria, we also had our civil war, and we also had issues of displacements and all that. Now, are we now saying that the last civil war probably left Nigerians not appreciating the level of destruction that we had in that civil war? Is that what we're saying?
Well, I will not say that, because in the first place, people like us were very young. Some of us were born during the civil war, and the little part of it that we saw, it was not something palatable. It's not something that we ever pray for our enemy country, that they should go through what we went through.
But you see, what bothers me, Prof, and maybe other Nigerians, is that it is these same Nigerians that saw the civil war, that witnessed the civil war. As a matter of fact, some of them, some of the military heads that we've had, they took part in the civil war. You know, we had the federal force against the Biafra force and all that. They've been military heads of state and all that. They have a first-hand experience of the civil war. If you ask me, I didn't witness the civil war, except what I've read in the literature and all that. Now, these same Nigerians now are the same people that are alleged, that were accused, that are responsible for what the country has become. What is going on?
Well, unfortunately, the situation we find ourselves in the country, most of the actors or tangential actors of civil war are still some of them are still very much around. And that is why one would
they've been in leadership. I mean,
they've been in leadership. They need to still make sure that they find a way to homogenize as much of the country as possible. And having been people who actually understood the nitty-gritty of issues that led to the civil war, they're supposed to be able to also find a way not to have situations that will replicate it. Because I believe that the issue of various agitations that we have in many parts of the country today could have been mitigated by good governance, particularly by people who witnessed the past and are still very much around, agile, intelligent, and with their wisdom ought to have been able to put certain things in place to ensure, to foster good governance and the progress for the entire society. Because come to think of it, in our society today, hunger is like it has become common household to majority of people. There is no geopolitical zone we have in this country that you can say is not hunger ravaged. There is nowhere that you can say there is enough security. There is nowhere that you can say these are the ones that are enjoying. So all these are parameters that are not good for us to say that we are forgotten about. We still remember about what led to this civil war. We don't pray it happens. And as much as possible, we must do everything to make sure that it doesn't happen. God forbid. Because the warfare that they had that time They were no longer, I mean, they were not in any way compared to the common conventional warfare that we have today. We have now.
Yeah.
So we should just try as much as possible in various regions, talk to one another why we don't need to go into war. Now, why we must not go into war.
Yeah, it is not even going to war that is the issue in Nigeria. I think what seems to be happening in Nigeria is the leadership problem that we have. And oftentimes, the nation seems not to have learned a lesson. I mean, every 4 years or 8 years, as it were, we go through general elections, and we seem not to be getting it right at every election, Professor.
Well, the reason is not too far from the nature of leadership or the leadership style that we have. Almost in every local government state, even at the national level, there is no proper program, proper method of leadership recruitment. There is no proper method. You just see people who come up as spontaneous leaders, who I would call spontaneous leaders, probably because of what they have in their pockets. But the moment we start de-emphasizing what people have in their pockets, and we start looking at what they have to offer upstairs.
So the problem with Nigeria probably is not with the leaders, it's with the followers there.
Well, it's a combination of the two. It's a combination of the two, because it's the way the society is as of today. If you have anyone that has enough money, I watched a little, about 4 or 5 minutes video clip, not too long. Small children, it was made by these people that make skit makers.
Yeah.
He just called about 5 or 6 children. He said, if I give you money, if I offer you money and God, which one will you pick? Small children, not up to 14 years. 5 of them said, I'll pick money. How about you? I'll pick money. How about you? I'll pick money. There was only one of them that said he will pick God. And the man had to draw that one to himself and gave him large sum of money. So others started saying, I know it's God we pick now. He said, you already said it. You know, that is a reflection of how our larger society is.
Okay.
We worship money. We don't worship the quality of people that we have. We don't pay recognition
to the quality of
people that we have around. And those are the ones that can change the society.
And this seems to be peculiar to Nigeria.
Well, I have not stayed in other countries to know how they behave. But in Nigeria today, in fact, God forbid, God forgive us, if just as the man displayed there, if God were to come physically like this, and they put money by the side, people will not vote for God. They will vote for money.
Okay. All right, so let's look at the emergence of Paul Kagame now after the 1994 Rwanda civil war. Paul Kagame also emerged from one of the minority groups, so some people say that perhaps it was enough compensation for the Tutsi, if I got that correctly now, where he is from. Because the genocide seems to have affected that group more. A lot of the Tutsi died, as a result of the civil war and all that. So let's speak on the emergence of Paul Kagame. Can we really say that it was enough compensation for Rwanda?
Well, if you call it compensation, it may not be far from that. And if you call it its eventual triumph over the other smaller groups, one may not be incorrect as well. If you look at the composition of those that colonized them, just as they do in every society they get to, they will look for a small group of people, empower them, and then make them lord over the majority, who more or less may see themselves being neglected, being abandoned, and may want to just say, we cannot take this anymore. And if you look at the way the whole thing also happened, it was a Hutu president that they had. who had a plane crash. So there was this suspicion of that plane crash being sabotaged. So that was part of what led to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you already had this pocket of rebels in the country who felt that no, it shouldn't be like that. And the whole thing got escalated with the death of the sitting president.
Yeah.
So with that one, Kagame also formed a group, which was more or less, from what we read, was formed within DRC, at the boundary of DRC. So he was launching his attack from there. And eventually, if you look, we have said it that you have the two Hutus, you have the Tutsis. The Tutsis also spread, part of them, you have them in DRC.
The DRC, yeah.
So more or less, he used his people to also launch attack into Rwanda. And eventually, when he became triumphant, and he saw himself as the rallying point. So if others decided to support him, particularly among the Hutus, they did not have any choice. Probably because of the high caliber of weapon that he probably had then, or due to others, international community now coming to say that enough is enough. So the way he has been ruling, all of them have more or less accepted him to be their leader. And that is why they must have supported him up till this moment. Okay. But like I said earlier on, when the ovation is loud,
better to leave the
it's better to leave the stage.
Yeah. Okay, let's quickly talk on his policies and programs. We know that women form a major part of his government, as opposed to some other African countries. Take, for example, in Nigeria, where the issue of the 35% women affirmative order is still something that is still arguable. You know, we're still contesting it and all that now. So I think that is one major thing that leaders in Africa also need to learn from Paul Kagame.
Well, it's, you are right, because women are part and parcel of the human race. And where we have the combination of woman and man intelligence, it's usually a superb one. Not just masculine power at all times. It's what is needed at all times in every society. Of course, he has tried as much as possible to ensure that and establish it over the years. And that may also now call to question the number of women that we talk about, 35%, like a country like Nigeria. You know, we've mentioned it in terms of population. Rwanda is nowhere to be found in Nigeria. Maybe the whole of Rwanda we talk about may not be more than Edo Delta combined with Ekiti. So if you have that, you can imagine they can easily get their own 35%. But in Nigeria, as we speak, even in Edo State alone, how many women would you say you have in politics that will be at the caliber of men?
Yeah.
So that is the problem. That may be one of the problems.
Okay. All right. So quickly, as we try to draw the curtain out, no matter how we may want to praise Paul Kagame, we also need to look at some issues that people have, you know, talked against him for. Talking about the human rights issues, violation of human rights in Rwanda and all that. Now, you want to quickly speak to it?
Well, there is no way the complaints like violation of human rights will not come up, particularly for a sit-tight ruler. Because at all times, ordinary greeting may be misinterpreted as an insult. Or an abuse, particularly when he feels that he has to find every means to sustain himself in power. So that may not be far in terms of accusation. And equally, you have amongst such leaders who will just feel that in order to suppress any opposition, will find one flimsy reason, or just look for any case whip up sentiment against certain persons. And at the end of the day, you see the person out of circulation.
But the accusations are really not just sentimental issues. I mean, they are real.
I'm not saying they are not real, but they should be expected. They should be expected for a sit-tight ruler. Because I've said it, if you've been there since 1994 till date, we are talking of 31 years.
About 31 years.
31 years.
Yeah.
So remember that himself is not an old man. For someone to have spent 31 years in power and still counting. You know, the other time they had election, which will make him president till is it 2030?
2035.
Or 2035. So
yes.
by 2035, he will have been 41 years in power.
In power.
So when by that time, his own son that is projecting to become to follow him
yes.
will have been old enough, matured enough
Yes.
to take up the mantle of the mantle of leadership after him.
Okay.
So there is no way he will not step on toes. There is no way he will not find a way to subjugate certain persons from coming up.
All right, so we just quickly, there's a message that, I have here from the Secretary General of the United Nations, still talking about, trying to make reflections on the victims of the Rwanda president. Now, message on the International Day of Reflection on the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. And it says that today we mourn the 1 million children, women, and men slaughtered in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. And this appalling chapter in human history was not a spontaneous frenzy of horrendous violence. It was intentional, premeditated, and planned, including through the hate speech that inflamed division and spread lies and dehumanization. And the overwhelming majority of victims were Tutsi, but also Hutu and others who oppose the genocide. As we recall how these crimes came about, we must also reflect on Renaissance with our own times. Now, all this goes down. Message from the Secretary General of the United Nations talking about making reflections on the victims of the Rwanda war. Now, Prof, just as you said a while ago, that what actually happened to Rwanda, there were just things, hate speech here and there, hatred here and there, and before they knew it, it now snowballed into a civil war that resulted into a genocide, in Rwanda. So as we draw the curtain on this show, on this program today. Now, Nigeria is probably, I don't want to say that Nigeria is maybe going through a similar situation, but the way the country seems to be going now, this continuous insecurity issue, I mean, for more than 10, 15 years, it's been an accusation of cattle headsmen, Fulani. I don't want to be generalistic here, but we hear all the time Fulani headsmen seems to be on one side. Then it seems that Nigeria is on one side. Prof, quickly, let's talk to this.
Well, I will not say that we attach criminality to a particular tribe here.
Yeah.
Because in recent time, I listened to a video clip where someone from Edo extraction was saying that, well, we do say that the kidnappers are this, they are that they also have them there in their own communities, in their own tribe.
In other words, some Edo people are also involved in the kidnapping.
So that is what it means. And then in every society where you have criminalities, the best way to handle that is, in my own view, is to make sure that you take every criminal, you treat them the way they are. Whether the person is a Fulani, the person is a Yoruba, the person is an Hausa or an Edo man. As much as the person is a criminal, handle him or her as a criminal. It is only when we do that we will not be attaching and then spreading hatred against certain persons in the society. And because that it's unfortunate. We come from a society where we grew up with Fulani.
Yeah.
Even in this Edo state, there were people that grew up with real Fulani. Those time, 20, 30, 40 years back, you will not agree that it's the same set of people you grew up with.
The same set of people you are trying to go against now.
That you are trying to go against now.
Yeah.
So all the society is dynamic. Human beings are dynamic. And if we have anyone amongst us who have now gravitated towards becoming criminals, whichever tribe they come from, let us call them criminals, not as Yorubas, not as Hausas, not as Ishans, not as Benis.
Not as Fulanis.
Not as Fulanis.
Yeah.
Let us call them criminals and handle them as such. Because the kind of hatred that we have developed against one another, it's so bad that even when you have someone that will benefit you by your side, because of this compound hatred that you have for him, you may just be hesitant to request for anything from such individual. And that is where the solution to your problem will come from.
Yeah.
So, in my own view, we should go beyond that. What should be paramount in our mind is that how do I, as an individual, contribute meaningfully to the progress of this nation? How do you, as an individual, within the little things that you do, how do you use that one to advance central progress for this nation and for every other person that associates with you?
Okay.
Not this hatred that we are having.
All right, so we want to say a very big thank you to Professor Buyunami, additional on the program today, African Discourse, and we've been looking at Rwanda, 31 years later after the genocide in 1994, whereby it was a major calamity in Rwanda. 3 major ethnic groups, but the most affected were the Tutsi, which wasn't the minority, and of course we also had the Hutus too. And we also join, other people in the world, just as the United Nations has declared and designated today, the 7th day of April of every year, as a matter of fact, to remember the victims of that genocide in Rwanda. So we share in your pain as we speak now. We understand that some families lost relations that they may never see again in their entire life as a result of some form of displacement of that genocide, of that civil war situation in 1994 in Rwanda. I mean, imagine a situation that for about 100 years, there was war. I mean, the Nigerian Civil War did not last up to about 3 years. Or
3 years.
About 3 years, but even at that, imagine a situation whereby for 100 years, there was war. Not just an ordinary war, but a genocide.
100 days.
100 days, I beg your pardon. A genocide, killing people, maiming people, and all that. So we share in your pain, and of course, we pray that God Almighty will repose all the victims, those that died, and those that have been maimed for life. God Almighty will comfort them. All right, so Prof, I want to say a very big thank you for joining us on the program today, African Discourse. So thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and also for Professor Masa Junwa, it's a pity you couldn't join us on this program today. I know that you have first-hand information when it comes to Rwanda, and that's the way it is. So until same time next week on the same program, my name is Evan Sunokuge. Goodbye, and God bless you.